Okay, welcome to our Tanya class. Today is February 23rd. We're in Tanya chapter 7. Shaar Hayichud Vehaemuna, the portal of the oneness and faith, chapter 7, in the regular Tanya, page 162. And let's find a good page. Okay, so now we've spoken quite a bit about the absolute unity of creation. That is, everything exists only because of the creative force, the word of Hashem that causes it to exist. I think we've had a number of ways to describe this creative force or to refer to it. And it's the creative force that causes everything to exist. And we've spoken a bit about the absolute unity, that it's all one. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. This is actually the creative force. I think we called it a spark, is actually the main component of any object. We don't see that. We see the physical part, but in truth, the physical part is really ancillary. It's really um, um, second fiddle. It's really it takes a back seat to the spiritual part, to the creative force. We also said that the divine light is too strong for anything else to exist. The only way there can be creation is if the light is curtailed by a force called Tzimtzum. The creative force is represented by the name Havaya, Hashem's special name. And the force that curtails it is represented by the name Elohim. However, we said in the last few weeks that these two forces do not work against each other. And I'm going to go off a little bit without reading. I think I described it as having a gadget. Um, one machine, one container, and inside there are different components. And one part is what pushes forward, whatever it is, whether it's a raw material that pushes it forward, whether it's you're having Play-Doh and you have a plunger that pushes the Play-Doh forward. And then there's another component within this gadget that restricts the object from moving forward. In the Play-Doh example, you have a plunger where you're pushing through the Play-Doh, but on the other side, you have a shape like I don't know what they call a slide or a screen, and there's a cutout of a star. It could be a five-pointed star, a six-pointed star. It could be the shape for little kids. They have a shape of a square, of a circle, triangle. And when you push through the Play-Doh, so then the the screen um blocks most of the material from going through, most of the Play-Doh from going through, and what comes out is in the shape of the screen. It could be a triangle, a square, a rectangle, a five-pointed star, a six-pointed star. And or it's something that imposes a certain shape or a certain form and restricts most of the object from going through if it's not Play-Doh. So these are one gadget, and with the gadget there's different components, and these two parts, components within the gadget, in a way work against each other. One is pushing the material forward, and the other one restricts or curtails. And this is one way to describe the functions of the two forces, the force represented by the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Havaya, the creative force, and the force represented by the name Elohim, the restrictive force, the curtailing force. However, I think that the analogy is not accurate, and really, the in creation, Havaya and Elohim are not two components of one gadget. They are really both one and the same. I don't think I have a way to describe it. Something that keeps coming to my mind is what I read maybe much more than 40 years ago about automatic transition transmissions. But a diagram of how automatic transmissions work. I don't know. In any case, um, I see Benzian is smiling at me. At least in the picture, he's smiling. So I guess he appreciates it.
No
Okay.
idea how an automatic transmission works, so or
What?
manual either. No
What?
idea how a transmission works, so it doesn't really. The analogy would be lost on me.
Last night I was watching something that was like a cartoon type that showed, but a manual transmission. But in any case, um, I'm just saying that that's something that comes to mind. So I don't know if we have a good way to describe this that both are that of one thing of how this unity is, that even to us they seem as two opposing forces. We know that they work together because you don't want to just push all that Play-Doh through, without a shape. You're trying to get a shape out of it. So they're both working for the same goal. And here certainly they're both working for the same goal. We'll talk about that. But it seems that they're both one and the same, even though we describe them as different forces. And I don't have a good way to describe that. I'm going to continue inside. These two forces do not work against each other. Obviously, the effort of the name Havaya is to create, but the name Elohim is not to prevent creation. In fact, without it, creation could not exist. The name Elohim provides structure for the creative force. It curtails the divine light, not because it doesn't want it to shine through, but because it's only when the light is in a diminished state that a world can exist. So the effort for Elohim is also towards creation. We explained that these two forces, which appear to work against each other, are actually one and the same. One way to look at it is that Elohim only diminishes the light. So we just explained one way. That is that they're both working for the same goal to create a world. Another way to look at it is that Elohim only diminishes the light from the perspective of creation, from the way we see it down below. But from the perspective of the light is not diminished. Put another way, from the perspective of the light, creation is not independent of the light. And we'll explain this further in chapter 7. And I'm going to read number 2 as well. Hello, welcome, Reb Wolf. The Zohar says there are two ways to view absolute unity. One is from the perspective of the light, where creation does not take away anything from the light. And the other is from the perspective of creation, where creation exists as a separate entity, but it's understood that it exists solely because of the light, and the light is the primary component of the existence of creation. The first way is expressed in the pasuk Shema Yisrael, where it says Havaya is our Elokim. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Havaya is our Elokim. Havaya is one. The second way is expressed in the statement that we say after. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Aliyah Vod. Blessed is the name of the glory of his reign forever and ever. Before I go on, I do want to say um, that we said before that when we say the pasuk Ki Hashem v'yadata hayom v'shivasa Ki Hashem Elokim ein od, that there is none other, doesn't mean that there is no other God. It means that there is nothing else. Nothing exists independent of God. Okay, I'm going to read inside now, page 162, chapter 7. Perek Zion, chapter 7. Uvazayuvan mashakasu bazar HaKadosh. Then now we can understand what's written in the Zohar. The pasuk Shema Yisrael hu yichud ilah. Uvaruch Shem kvod malchus alamavod yichud tita. So we have two lines. We have Shema Yisrael. Listen, Israel. Hashem, Havaya is our Elokim. Havaya is one. And then immediately we insert Baruch Shem Kavod. Baruch Shem Kavod is a fancy way of saying Baruch Hashem, blessed is God. But it's a fancy way. So what does it mean? I wrote it here. Blessed is the name of the glory of his reign forever and ever. So the first way of absolute unity, that everything is all one and there's nothing independent, that's the perspective of the light, and that's expressed in the verse, in the pasuk, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. I'm sorry, I'm reading inside the book, I forgot. And the second way is called, that's called Yichuda Ilah, the upper unity, or the unity, the way it's seen from above, from the perspective of the light. The second way is Yichuda Tita, unity, the way it's seen from the perspective of creation. And that's expressed in the statement Baruch Shem Kvod Malchusa. Ki va'ed b'chilufei asfon. Because the last word va'ed, which means forever, is really the word echad by switching letters. What does that mean? That's in number 3. The first line, Shema Yisrael, uses the word echad for one. The second line says vo'ed, which means forever, which contains the word echad in a hidden manner. In analysis of Torah, we can switch letters that come from the same group. Now, there are many ways that letters can be grouped. There are many ways to make groups of letters. One of the more well-known ways, which we had in the first chapter, is to switch the first and last letters of the alphabet. And to switch the second and second to last letters. That's one way. In this case, we have the word echad and va'ed. The first letters of both are aleph and vav. And they both belong to the group of letters aleph, hey, vav, yud, ehavi, that are, with this group of letters are sometimes not consonants. They are 4 letters that can be in a word, and they aren't heard. So that's one group of letters. And so therefore, we can switch aleph, hey, vav, and yud. The word echad has an aleph, the word va'ed has a vav. We can switch, the aleph can be a substitute, the vav can be a substitute for the aleph. The second letters in both words, ches and ayin, are both from the group of guttural letters. We have 5 guttural letters or 4 guttural letters from in Hebrew, aleph, hey, ches, ayin, and so those can be switched as well. We do find that more often, that these letters are switched one for another. It's possible. This is much more common. The last letter of both words is Daled. So the word Va'ed is like a hidden form of the word Echad. In other words, Echad is one, but Va'ed is not one like the word Echad. You have to decode the word to discover how it is one. And therefore, the word va'ed represents the absolute unity from the perspective of creation. Okay, and that is the first four lines of what we just learned in chapter 7. Any questions, comments, or feedback?
Yeah, I have a question. Echad is Aleph, Ches, Dalet, and Va'ed is Vav, Aleph, Dalet,
Ayin. Vav,
I,
ayin, dalet.
Ayin, Dalet. Okay, so we're not really, so the Ayin and the Aleph are switchable?
The ches and the ayin.
The Ches and the Ayin are switchable. Okay.
Yeah, for those, excuse me, those we pronounce ayin
It's a
as
guttural, right? That's a guttural,
pronounce it usually as silent. When I was in kindergarten, we learned it's a silent letter.
right?
But in truth, it's not a silent letter like an aleph. Those of you who hear me lane, hear me pronounce the ayin. So it is more of a guttural letter. And
Okay.
the word ches, we also don't pronounce in its true state. The Sephardim pronounce the ches as with only half of the ch that we do. Now, I'm not really good at it, so I don't do it often, but it's like het. It's halfway between the hey and the way we pronounce the ches.
Okay.
And so therefore they're both called guttural letters.
Guttural letter. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Number 4. Now we spoke about this drastic transformation that curtailed the light, which is called simsum. Simsum means to contract or diminish. The purpose of Tzimtzum is to curtail the light so that creation would appear independent of its source, the divine light. Now Hashem is our king. You know that. Every bracha, most brachas, we say Melech HaOlam, he's the king of the world. Someone with many sons is not a king over them. Even if the person has many ministers, he can't be a king over them. He can only be a king if he has ordinary citizens over whom to rule. The um the plebes or the
Amcha.
proletariat. What?
The Amcha.
Yes, the amcha is right. What I was thinking is the amcha for those means in Hebrew means your nation, with it's a common term used. I was thinking of the word proletariat.
Oh,
I always have to think about to remember that. Proletariat are the ordinary people, and it's
Proletariat, it means workers and field workers, people without education.
without it. Okay, good, thank you. And I think I went once when I looked it up. I think I saw that proletariat means people who don't have money making money for them. I think that's
Right.
proletariat.
You make money from your labor.
You make money from your labor.
Not really,
That's
not really. No. So proletariat, it means people who will work for idea, some idea. So we are building a new country. We are working for some idea. It's like fake idea, no?
a fake idea.
Yes, something like this.
I,
Because Lenin, he was leader of proletariat, leader.
that would be the Soviet definition of the term. Yeah.
So
It's history. It's big history of
Right.
Soviet Union.
Right. Right.
yeah, so I looked up, I think in the definition was that if a person owns property and he rents out the house, so he has um what's it called? He has he owns something that's earning money for him. But if someone is earning money only from his labor, that's proletariat. So um he doesn't own something that can earn him money. So anyways, in this case, I use the word proletariat. It means the ordinary people. who are so, and that's the only way you can have a king. A king can only be a king if there is amcha, if there's proletariat, if there are ordinary citizens who are distant from the king, not his children, not his not his children, not his ministers, in order for him to be considered their king. If there was I think when we used to look in the as a kid in the Guinness Book of World Records, there were these rulers or dictators in Africa who had, I think one had over 900 children. And anyone here who remembers the days of Idi Amin from Idi Amin from Uganda, maybe he had 70, 80 children. So you can have 900 children, you're not going to be their king because you're their father. So you can only be a king if you have a nation, if you have people who are distant from you. So in this sense too, if we want to call Hashem our king, Melech HaOlam, king of the world, then creation has to be distant or independent of the creative light. For that level of light, for to be able to call Hashem our king or ruler. We have a rule, Ein Melech below Am. There is no such thing as a king if there is no nation. And Hasidus uses this to talk about the level of light at which we can say that there is something independent to be called a king. The word for nation Am is actually similar to the word for glowing embers. That means the burning pieces are no longer unified by a fire. Each piece burns independently. And here too, the word Am, nation, implies that the subjects are independent of the king, or that creation sees itself as independent of the creative light. I'm going to read the next few lines. Kihine sibas v'tama tzimtzum v'hester hazeh. The reason for this tzimtzum, for that the light is diminished and curtailed, what I call a drastic transformation. Hashem concealed, he hid the light and the life, the creative force of the world. Is so that the world will appear separate from the creative force. I told you before, since we're learning in the beginning, that the real existence is the creative force, and creation, the physical world that we see, is a like a smoke screen. It's not the real thing. It's not the real thing. The real thing is the divine, is this creative force within us. But so you already might assume, yes, of course, that's the real thing. So I have to bring you back to reality, and that's what we're able to learn and to understand from the Tanya. But in practically speaking, in life, this creative force isn't felt. It's well known that the purpose of creation is so that it can be felt that Hashem is king. This idea that Hashem is the king, or that he rules the world, will be revealed. De'ein melech b'loi am. We have a rule that there is no, that without a nation, there's no such thing as a king. Perish, which means am milashon aimamus. Am doesn't only mean a nation; it also is the word that's used for a glowing ember. Shehim devarim nifradim v'zar mochakim mimalas hamelech. That they are independent of each other. They're not unified by the fire that joins them all, but each ember is there on its own, glowing. And in this case, the Am, the nation, are independent and separate from the king. Even if the king has many children, he can't call himself their king. Even if he only has ministers, he can't become a king. It's only through the amcha, it's only through the ordinary subjects, only through the proletariat that then he can be a king in all his glory. I do want to point out that we say here the word king, 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 and immediately we think either about King George the Third, who, as far as the colonies were concerned, was a despot. I think the colonists who were who wanted independence, wanted to secede from England, I think we're only 30% or so, 35%. And you had many who supported England, who supported staying connected with England. Then anyways, we think of King George the Third, and there's how if we and hearing the horror stories, if you read the Declaration of Independence, they think that he's some kind of despot. If you have you think about um what's his name? The Tsar Alexander or Nicholas, and we hear things about them. We the title of king has a very negative connotation for us, but basically it means the leader. And if the leader is the president, then call it a president. If your leader is the prime minister, call it a prime minister. Whether it's and we're talking about a leader that is a true leader who cares about the subjects. So we say king here, it shouldn't make us uncomfortable. Um, it shouldn't make us uncomfortable. And something negative, the idea of a king is is the leader. It's talking about a true king who cares about the people and his best people, the best interests of the people at heart. King, president, prime minister.
No sounds, Chaim, no sounds.
What? No sound? Make sure your sound is on. Make sure it's turned up. Okay. We're going to do one more. 5. Now, this function of king is obviously seen in the last of the spheros, Malchus, which means kingship. We may know we have 10 spheres. The last one is called Malchus, which means kingship. This is where the idea of king comes. The name of Hashem, and I should say, it's at this stage, in the first stage of creation of Philus. Only when we get to the last of the spheres, only when we get to the last of the spheres, Malchus, that then there is something that's like an independent entity. The name of Hashem associated with Malchus is Adni, Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which means a chief or a master. Hashem is called Adon Kol Haaretz, the master of the entire world. And apparently, this name is also associated with Elohim, as we've been speaking till now. We said before that in order to be a king, the subjects have to be separate or independent of the king. And with this name, Adni, it makes sure that creation feels independent and is not too close to the creative force. As we've said, if creation did not feel independent, if it felt that it was connected to the creative force, it would cease to exist because of the overwhelming power of the creative force. And now we're going to read this inside. V'shem hamar al midas malchus yisbarach hu shem adnus. The name of Hashem, which is associated with malchus, which shows that Hashem is rules, is the name of Adnus, Adon, the master or the chief. Because he's the master or chief of something. Kihu Adon kol haaretz. We call Hashem Adon kol haaretz. He is the master of the world. You can't be a master without a world, without something to be a master over. V'nimtza ki midazu v'shem zeh heina mahavin v'kaima olam liyos olam k'moisuhu achshav. So it's this trait, attribute, this name causes the world to exist. It sustains the existence of the world. That the world should exist in its present state. Yesh gamar v'davar nifrad b'fnei asmai. That something which is a yesh is something that is independent of its source. That it's real. And I'll say for us, and the truth is that the world is not an illusion. I may have used the word optical illusion before, maybe I didn't, a smokescreen, but the world is real. That is discussed in Hasidus, and there are different proofs that's given for it. And it appears that in the world, the creation feels that it is independent of its source. The Eina Batal Mesius Mamish, and it does not lose its own existence. It does not become canceled or nullified or nugatory. Were this name of Adni not do its job, and that is to regulate the light, to restrict the light so that whatever comes after feels that it is an independent entity. If it would not do that, God forbid, the world would revert to its source, the word of Hashem, the breath of his holy mouth, ubatel sham b'mesius mamish, and it would become totally nullified, void. And it would lose its own existence, it would lose its own independence, and it would become like nothing, and you would not be able to refer to it as Olam. We would not be able to say, Melech HaOlam, he's the king of the world. You wouldn't be able to say the king of the world, because it wouldn't be a world. It would be totally absorbed within godliness, within the divine light. And this is where we're going to stop. Any questions, feedback, rebuttals? Okay?
Okay.
Okay, then.
Right. Thank you, Rabbi.
I'm going to share the link. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah.
Nice to have 5 people on.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
guess I
you.
could also share the notes if anyone wants.
Sure.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay. Take care. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Good night.
Chaim, Chaim,
Yes.
I would like to say you something.
I'm not hearing you well.
Okay. Now sound is good.
You're very weak. Your voice is very weak. It's very hard to hear.
Now sound is good. Now
Yes.
sound is good. I would like tell you that Rima called us and told us about
Kiddush. For Shurik.
For Shurik, for Shurik. And we would like not we would like we,
March 15th.
March 15th. We would like bring money
Okay.
for Shurik.
Okay. It's the same day as your mother's yahrzeit.
Same day like my mother inside. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So we will bring money and give you or somebody. Yeah, yeah,
Have my name on the envelope.
I got it.
Put it in an envelope and put my name. Okay?
And we give money you or somebody to you, yeah?
You can bring it in the office, but put my name on the envelope
Office in envelope for you.
with my name. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.